Okay, I think we'll make a start. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Don Baker, Team Manager for the Environment and Heritage team at West Sussex County Council, and I'm leading on the development of the local nature recovery strategy for West Sussex. So tonight we have just a single presentation from Dr. Kate Cole, County Ecologist, and my counterpart in East Sussex County Council. And to support this LNRS public consultation, Kate will provide us with an overview of the two strategies for West Sussex and for East Sussex with Brighton and Hove. When that's finished, we'll open the floor to questions, and we expect to finish promptly at 8. Also joining us tonight to assist with questions is Julie Middleton from the Sussex Nature Partnership, who's been pivotal in the development of the two LNRSs. And we're also joined by Di and Rob Allcroft from Way Forward, who have managed our extensive engagement program and are handling the technical side of the webinar tonight. And you'll see Rob again later on, chairing the question and answer session. This is also a good opportunity for me to introduce Ben Rainbow, who is a newly appointed county ecologist at West Sussex, who will be taking the West Sussex LNRS forward from this development phase and into the delivery phases. And finally, on the introduction side, although not able to make it tonight, I have to acknowledge the Sussex Biodiversity Record Centre, without whom we would not have been able to produce any of the mapping and analysis that you see within this consultation. So we've organised this webinar because landowners and land managers are, of course, absolutely central to the success of the local nature recovery strategy. Without your insight, experience and involvement, this national initiative is not going to deliver on its potential. We also recognise that some of you may be approaching this with understandable scepticism, perhaps fed up with endless consultations or have concerns about what a DEFRA-led initiative like the local nature recovery strategy might mean for how you manage your land in the future. Conversely, skeptical or not, many among you are already actively supporting nature recovery or are thinking about how to do so. Whatever your position, we want to hear from you. This consultation is your opportunity to tell us what you support, what concerns you, and what further clarity you might need. So with that said, it's time to hand you over to our speaker this evening, Kate Cole. Over to you, Kate.
Thanks, Don, and good evening, everybody. As Don says, my name's Kate, and I'm leading on the strategy that covers East Sussex and Brighton and Hove. Can we have the first slide, please, Di? So before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any technical problems, you can't see the slides, you can't hear us properly, please put it in the chat and Rob will do his best to help you in the background. We are recording this session. We will upload the recording onto the Sussex Nature Recovery website as soon as we can afterwards. And we'll also be sharing the link to that recording and a copy of these slides to everybody who's registered for this event. If you have a question that you'd like to ask about the consultation or the presentation, please use the Q&A button. You can post anonymously if you want to. You can also upvote other people's questions. So if you see a question that you are interested in, you tick the little thumbs up box and that will show us that lots of people are interested, and we'll try and get to that more quickly. But we will try and get through as many questions as we can. Okay, next slide, please, Di. So why is this LNRS of interest to the people who own, manage and farm land? Well, these strategies are tools to help us implement nature recovery. They show where habitats and species can be recovered or supported to provide the greatest benefits. If you're already doing work for nature or you're thinking about it, it can support your decision making, help you understand what parts of your land hold the greatest potential for nature recovery. They don't link directly to agri-environment schemes, but we have written it to align with these wherever possible. And because it's a statutory document that's been collaboratively produced and peer reviewed, it can give you, funders, investors confidence if you choose to take recommendations forward. So the strategies themselves comprise a series of documents and a map. We think it's likely that you'll be most interested in the map, so we are going to spend a little bit of time looking at that shortly. But we'll walk you through how to find your land on the map, what it means if measures are mapped on or near your land, and what it doesn't mean, and how the strategy can still be useful even if there is nothing specific mapped to your land. Next slide, please. So our aim for this evening is to guide you through these draft strategies and where you can find the information that's likely to be of most interest to you, and how you can provide your feedback on them so that we can make these as useful as possible. We're going to give you a brief overview of what they are. This may be more of a reminder if you're already familiar, and we will guide you through the key components so you know where to look for what it is you're interested in. As I said, we'll spend a little bit of time on explaining how to access and interrogate the map, because that's probably the most complicated part, but potentially the most interesting. And we'll finish off with a brief overview of what comes next. But there should be plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. Next, please, Di. But to start off, we're just going to give you a reminder of what these strategies are and also where we are in the process. Next, please. So these strategies are a new statutory process to help nature. There are 48 of them being developed across the country, and they all follow a defined process that's set out in regulations and statutory guidance. But they do vary across the country. This is because the quantity and quality of local data and resources varies, and because of how the guidance is being interpreted slightly differently locally. As Don says, we have two strategies for Sussex, one for East Sussex and Brighton and Hove, and one for West Sussex. But because we have shared stakeholders and a history of working together, we've been developing these two through a single process under the banner of Sussex Nature Recovery. More than 2,000 people and organisations have been involved in their development through a variety of means, from workshops and surveys and mapping tools through to webinars and task and finish groups. Excuse me. The two strategies have now been drafted and they're out for public consultation for 6 weeks. So that closes on the 26th of November. And our aim is to publish in spring of next year. But even before we've published, we are already starting to think about how we can embed these into local decision making. Next, please, Di. So this slide is just to give you an idea of some of the organisations who've been involved in getting us to where we are. We've got really good representation from the farming and land management sector. So, for example, we've got the membership groups like the NFU and CLA have been involved, land advisors like CLM and FWAG, and the protected landscapes as well. National and local environmental organisations, businesses and utilities, and some of the big landscape partnerships across Sussex have also been actively involved, and these are in addition to all of the districts and boroughs across East and West Sussex. Next, please. So these strategies are intended to unlock funding. The clearest mechanism at the moment is biodiversity net gain. So the strategies help direct BNG to the areas where it would deliver the greatest benefits for nature. They'll also play a role in guiding other schemes, agri-environment schemes, but that's yet to be determined how that will happen. They'll play a role in the planning process, and they'll form the duty towards the conservation of biodiversity that lies with all public bodies. They'll support decision-making by providing an evidence base to give confidence to landowners and funders and investors. And they'll help direct funding from the private sector into nature-based solutions, for example. So really they're about targeting. It's about ensuring the right things are done in the most effective places. What they can't do is to dictate how land is used. They place no obligations on landowners or other organisations to carry out actions, and they can't protect more land for nature. If an area is mapped in the strategy, it doesn't place any new restrictions on developing that land or identify areas to be given legal protection. And whilst they highlight pressures like pollution and development, they can't tackle the sources of these pressures if they're covered by other frameworks. Next, please. So what do they contain? Well, there's a lot of information, sorry about that, but that is why we want to help you to understand the different parts and where to find things. So we've pulled together all the available ecological evidence and data. We've drawn from a review of over 150 published plans and strategies to inform our priorities and measures. We've reflected the views and concerns of local people, reflected existing projects, initiatives and ambitions. And these strategies have been and continue to be subject to local and national expertise and rigour. And this consultation is part of that. So all of this information has resulted in the strategies, which have now been now at consultation. And you can think of these as toolkits. So they are grounded in 7 strategic principles, and those underpin all of our priorities and measures. Each strategy has 24 priorities, which each are supported by more than 100 practical actions or measures to deliver them. And we've identified a suite of priority species for each strategy area and the measures needed to support their recovery as well. And then each local nature recovery strategy has its own habitat map too. Next, please. So each strategy has 4 parts plus an interactive map. The first 3 parts and the map are specific to each LNRS area. The content is different, but the format is very similar. Part 4 is a joint document that covers both East and West, as that describes the methodology we used. But if you want, for example, to understand the decision-making behind what's been mapped and what hasn't, that's the place where you need to go. Part 1 gives sort of context and the description. Part 2 has the priorities and the measures. And then part 3 is around species. Next, please. So as we've said, these are now out for public consultation, and we really want to hear your views on them. They both have their own consultation hub, which is being housed on the West Sussex platform, but there are links from the 2 county council websites and from the Sussex Nature Recovery website as well, and links in these slides, which we will send to you. On those consultation hubs, you will find all those 4 documents, a link to the map, and some user guides and frequently asked questions as well. And there are 3 ways that you can have your say. There is a consultation survey on the hub, if you scroll down to the bottom, that asks 36 questions. All of them are voluntary, so you can skip through any which you don't think are relevant to you. Many of them are multiple choice, but there is an option to add free text in some cases. Or you can add comments directly onto the map, and I'm going to run through how to do that shortly. Or you can email us if you have more detailed feedback. The addresses are here, and again, we will share these with you. Okay, next, please. So we're now going to run through what you'll find in each part of the strategy so that you know where to look for what it is that you're interested in. Next, please. So part 1 includes a description of our most important habitats and the species that rely on them. It tells you what the habitats are, where you find them, what condition they're in, if we know that, and what the main pressures on them are. Now, unlike a lot of other counties, we didn't have a state of nature report, either for Sussex as a whole or the component parts. So this is the first time that all this data is being drawn together like this. We've included farm landscape and soils within this description, but in reality, many of the habitats are likely to be of relevance to you. The description has been peer reviewed by a panel of leading local experts, and it gives a comprehensive summary of our natural habitats. So importantly, it gives us a benchmark against which we can measure progress and future trends. Next, please. Part 1 also recognises that we're not starting from a blank canvas. There is already a huge amount of amazing work that's going on for nature recovery across Sussex. Some of it is at the landscape scale, like the work of our protected landscapes and movements like Will to Waves. Some of it is related to very specific sectors like farmer clusters. And we also give some examples of local action from grassroots groups and projects. But from our experience, farmers are often involved in nature recovery at all of these different scales. So these strategies provide a framework for all of this existing work and recognises that it's that action that is the building blocks for nature recovery. We acknowledge the contribution that farmer and land manager-led initiatives are already making, but if there is something that you're doing that you would like to be recognised, please do let us know. Next, please, Di. Also within part 1, we summarise the key opportunities for nature recovery, and we've done that using these maps. These are based on natural character areas, so they take account of the underlying geology and landscape, but they also draw from protected landscape management plans, biodiversity opportunity areas, and from that review of published plans and strategies. So there's everything from sort of local and neighbourhood plans through to whole estate plans in there. So it reflects a consensus of the high-level spatial priorities for nature's recovery in our area. And it's been a really important foundation for the mapping of measures. Next, please. So that's part one. Part two is the real meat of the strategy. One of the first things in this part is this set of 7 strategic principles. So these guide the application of our priorities and measures. These describe the key issues for nature in Sussex and how we need to address them. They set the scene, they describe how we need to act and what we need to do. One of them is specifically about the need to showcase and support action for nature across our farm landscape. They also highlight that changes may be needed to our current system. So, for example, our designated sites aren't necessarily in good condition. Is there more that can be done? And they underscore the breadth of action that's needed for nature recovery. It's not just about habitat creation, it's also about improving access to nature, especially in urban areas, and supporting and championing our local farmers. Next, please. We then set out our priorities for nature recovery. So these are the habitat types or the features that Sussex is really important for and that we need to support. So the example here is to create and enhance opportunities for wildlife within the farmed landscape. Other habitat-specific priorities that might be of relevance to you include supporting the recovery of our rivers and river systems or woodland, hedgerows and scrub. Now, we also recognise that priorities can be about more than just single habitat types. So we have priorities for nature networks. These recognise and support the recovery of our habitat mosaics, our wildlife-rich areas and our nature corridors. So these might be relevant to you, especially if you're considering habitat banks, for example. And we have a priority for nature, health and wellbeing. So that acknowledges the link between access to nature and health. And each of these priorities comes with a series of outcome statements. There's just one example here. What these do is they tell us what success looks like. This gives us a direction of travel. What is it that we should be working towards in the short to medium term? Next slide, please. So each of these priorities then has a series of measures, and these are the actions that can be put in place to deliver the priorities. And this is what they look like. So each has a code. Then the measure itself, we state whether it's mapped or unmapped, and I'll come back to that. And then we have icons which show you the wider environmental benefits they provide. The next column is about how they could be implemented. So this is basically a series of techniques. What you actually need to do is often very site specific, but we wanted to give flexibility for landowners to choose the technique that's most appropriate to you and your site. You know your land best. Where they could be implemented, this is particularly important if you're not on the map because it still helps with targeting. And then finally, we've added in links for extra information. So that might be case studies or best practice or examples of alignment to funding if we know that. Now, most of these are core measures. They're what the LNRS aims to deliver. So in this example, it's to create species-rich or structurally diverse grass block strips or margins. But there are additional actions that fall outside the scope of the strategies, which are still really important. And we wanted to capture those, so we've included those as enabling measures. So for this example, an enabling measure would be to support a farmer-led communications initiative to promote that greater understanding of farming by the public. So these measures take the strategy from the high-level priorities down to the on-the-ground actions. There are 10 measures for farmland and soil, but a lot of the other habitat measures will be relevant as well. So, for example, buffer strips within the rivers and river systems priority. Within the document, at the end of the measures section for each priority, we have listed the other measures which overlap with the priority and can contribute to their delivery. So that may be helpful to you. Next slide, please. So part 2 is all about habitats. Part 3 is effectively the same, but for species. So this lists the most important species for our areas that need support over and above the actions in part 2. The actions in part 2 will help their habitats and in turn help them to recover, but there are some species that need additional support. These are our priority species. There are 160 for East Sussex, and 163 for West. It's important to note that there are more than, on top of these priority species, there are more than 300 which haven't been prioritised, not because they don't need help, but because they are being supported by the priorities and actions in Part 2. You can see all of the species and the prioritisation process in appendices to Part 3, and there are links to those within the document. Now, some species are grouped into assemblages, so this is where they would benefit from similar measures. So for the farm landscape, we have farm and birds assemblage and a rare arable plants assemblage, for example. Next, please. So the last part of the strategy is the local habitat map. This identifies the locations where measures can feasibly be delivered that would have the greatest impact for nature and wider environmental benefits. So this is effectively where you'd get the biggest bang for your buck. And these maps include a number of layers. So the first layer is the areas of particular importance for biodiversity, or the APIB. And this is very tightly defined in the regulations as designated sites and irreplaceable habitats. That's what's mapped as the APIB. Then we have the measures. These are the places where we think actions should be targeted to make the biggest difference. Now, some of these are mapped within the APIB, but where measures fall outside of our designated sites and irreplaceable habitats, these are areas that could become of importance for biodiversity. So that is our AKIB. Now, I just want you to note here that we couldn't map about 60% of our measures, including those for farmland and soils. Now, this was either because we didn't have good enough data, or it was because the regulations wouldn't let us, or because there is no best place to do it. It can be done anywhere, and that certainly applies, we felt, for a lot of the farmland measures. And again, if you want to understand what we mapped and what we didn't, do take a look at Part 4. Please do also remember that not being mapped doesn't mean you can't carry something out. There's still plenty of information in the written measures which can help targeting. But these maps are intended to help focus efforts, but we also wanted to allow flexibility for farmers. Now, we're very aware that lots of you use LandApp. Our map is not that detailed, but we are exploring how we could connect with LandApp in the future. Okay, next, please. So now I'm going to spend a little bit of time showing you the map and how to use it, if I can find it. Here it is. So I'm using the Sussex and Brighton and Hove map, but the West Sussex map works in exactly the same way. Some of you may be very familiar with this type of mapping, and I do apologise in advance if I'm teaching my grandmother to suck eggs here. But the first thing you'll see is the splash screen. This is just high-level information about the map and what's on it. The most important thing to notice here down at the bottom is that, these maps have been optimised for computer screens. You can look at them on your mobile devices, but if you really want to get into the detail and add comments, the far best thing to do is to do that on a desktop or a laptop. So once you've read through that, you just confirm and press OK. So by default, it will open up with this screen. So it's the LNRS area with a black outline, and then the APIB, your irreplaceable habitats designated sites, in red, and your AKIB, that's the measures outside the APIB, in orange. And then the panel down the side shows you the layers which you can toggle on and off. I'm going to come back to the layers, but I first want to show you the 4 icons down the side. So the first one is information, tells you about the map. It's got links back to the relevant parts of the document, tells you how to use it, what the different icons mean, so you can completely ignore me if you like and just read it there. And you can hide that screen, you can bring it back, and you can come back to it from any of the other layers as well, just by clicking on it. The map layers, as I said, you can turn them on and off. You may notice that ancient and veteran trees is still ticked, but you can't see it. If you zoom in, these will start to appear. Now, ancient veteran trees are irreplaceable habitats, so they are part of the APIB, but the format of the data is different. These are points rather than polygons, and the two parts of the map don't connect. We couldn't transfer all of them to polygons, as we didn't know how big the trees were. We didn't want to give misleading information. And at the county scale, it can be a bit disproportionate. It's only really when you get close in that you start getting the detail. But that's just to let you know that that's there. The next icon is on the background map. So the default is light grey because we think that's the easiest one to see the layers against. But there are other options there. There's aerial imagery, there's OpenStreetMap, or there's topographic hillshade. And then the final icon, the little envelope, is where you can add a comment. This opens up a little window in the corner, and you can add comments, pins and comments to the map, and I shall come back to that shortly. But first of all, I just want to go back to the layers. So you've got your APIB and your AKIB, and then you have all the priorities that we've been able to map. You'll notice that farm landscape isn't on here because we weren't able to map any measures within that. Within each of these are the measures that we've mapped. Again, they are by default all switched on. You can switch them off if you like, but they won't show until you click on that button at the top. In terms of finding locations, you can do it either zoom in if you know where you're going. You can do it by typing in place names. Hopefully it works, hurrah. You can do it by typing in grid references. That's one I prepared earlier. Oh, I didn't think that was going to work for a minute. Or you can use postcodes. So there's a variety of different ways that you can find your location within a map. So I'm just going to go back now to how to actually interrogate the map. I'm going to turn on all the measures as well as the APIB. There we go. If there's a white bit and you click on it, nothing's going to happen. If you click on something which seems to only have one colour, so these red bits, for example, you get a little pop-up box, and that will tell you that that red bit is part of the APIB, part of the area of particular importance, and that particular bit is a triple SI, and it highlights all the other triple SIs as well. Down here, that's also the APIB, but that one is a local wildlife site. And again, it will highlight your other local wildlife sites. If you click on something like this, which is one of the measures, again, you get a pop-up box. Here, the measure it's within the woodland, hedgerows and scrub priority. The measure is to enhance other priority woodland. So there's the full measure. That's the how you do it from part 2. And then it will also tell you any assemblages of priority species that might be associated with that habitat as well. If you click into an area where there appear to be lots of layers mapped, you'll get a box like this. And up in the corner, you can see it says 1 of 7. So you've got 7 different layers overlapping here. So you can scroll through them just by going through using these arrows, or you can click on that and go to whichever particular one you want. And again, it will give you all that information. So finally, I'm just going to look at adding in some information. So let's use the same location. So you find your place here. And then I'm going to, there's nothing mapped here, and I'm going to imagine that I own that bit of land because it would be very nice to, and that I'd like to do something there. So I'm going to find that bit of land on my map. It's that bit, I think. That's when I'm going to drop the pin. Then these are the 3 questions. What's your relationship to the site? Are you the owner, the manager? Are you an advisor or project manager, or other, just a local resident? I'm going to imagine that I own it. You have got 4 options here. If you disagree with something or you don't like something that's being mapped onto your land, you can put it there. If you agree with something, you like it, you can use that one. If you'd like to suggest an alternative action, or just make a general observational comment. So I'm going to go for that one. Oh. And then you can say what you like. So, ooh, I would like to create, I'd like to learn how to type. Thank. You can put additional information here if you want. I don't know if it is Rodmell Farm, I can imagine it is. And you can put in an email address if you want us to get back to you. And then all you do is you press submit. I'm not going to press submit because clearly that's rubbish and it would skew our results. But when you press submit, the pin will disappear from you. So it won't be publicly facing. Nobody else will see that information, but it will come to us as the LNRS team so that we can look at it and get back to you if we need to. So I hope that was helpful. What we're going to do now is to remember where I am and to just summarise what happens next. Sorry, I just need to try and unshare my screen. I can't do that. Okay. So I just want to round up by reminding us what these strategies intend to do and how they could be used. Next slide, please. So how can this LNRS help you to help nature? Well, it shows where we should be strategic in focusing our effort and why. It identifies a range of actions, case studies, further guidance to improve or create habitats and provide those wider environmental benefits on your land. It will support applications for funding, be that through biodiversity net gain or farming in a protected landscape or woodland creation grants, whatever it may be, because it identifies where the greatest potential for nature lies and what the most appropriate action would be. It also recognises where there might be opportunities across wider areas to deliver action at scale. And it provides a single set of opportunities and actions for all to rally behind, to seek funding for and start working together to deliver. So we hope it helps show how your actions could make a contribution to the bigger picture. Next slide, please. So moving towards delivery, we've taken all this information, we've used it to draft these strategies, which are essentially toolkits, and we need to start thinking about how we put this into action. Now, the first stage is obviously to get these published, and that's why we're asking you to respond to the consultation. And our aim is to publish in the spring. Now, the responsible authorities, that's the county councils at the moment, are being given a statutory role in supporting and enabling delivery. And we're trying to establish how best we can do that locally. It'll be about rallying everyone around the strategies, embedding them in local planning, and then identifying and developing high impact projects to start delivering these priorities. And then we can share learning and best practice from them. Next, please. So how the LNRS works with planning is a question that we are often asked. We kind of touched on this briefly earlier, but I just want to give a little bit more detail. They provide an evidence base for plan making and to inform planning decisions. Under the Environment Act, local planning authorities must have regard to the LNRS. They will be a material consideration, but the weight given to them will be determined by the local decision maker. They can shape how local plans interpret national policy, like the National Planning Policy Framework, and they're intended to support biodiversity net gain by incentivising its delivery in certain places through the strategic significance uplift. Now, these strategies are expected to gain more influence under the pending Levelling Up and Regeneration Act reforms. Nothing has yet been confirmed, but the view is that decisions are likely to favour development. Next, please. So please do respond to this consultation. We would very much like to hear from you. Do visit your hub, and if you could respond before the 26th of November, that would be great. Please also share spread the word. We'd like as many people as possible to feed into this. As well as the slides and a link to the recording, we're also going to be sending you a communications toolkit to help you do that. And just to let you know that for those without digital access, there is help in Sussex libraries as well for you. And I'm going to leave it there, I think, and we're going to move on to the question and answer. So if the panel can come back in. And Rob, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Kate. Yes, we do. We have the Q&A will remain open. So if you do have any questions for any of the panel here, having seen the presentation from Kate there, please do type your questions into the Q&A and we will endeavour to answer as many as we can. To get us going, Ben, may I bring you in on this? How does the habitat map link to BNG?
Thanks, Rob. Great question. So the habitat map has measures identified on it, and within biodiversity net gain, there's a statutory metric that has a strategic significance multiplier. But once the LRNS is published, this will be low, so 1.0, which would be a 0% weighting, or it will be high, which is a 1.15 or 15% weighting. So if you're creating units within a habitat bank or a planning application, then you would get an uplift on your unit sale for BNG, if you like.
Great, thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Kate,
Sorry,
did you want to come in on that?
Can I just add to that, please? This is one of the reasons why we've specifically got priorities for creating wildlife-rich areas and habitat banks, because you get the uplift if you're mapped and you're delivering the measure that is mapped there. So if it's only mapped for hedgerows, for example, and you're creating hedgerows and grassland and woodland and various other things, you would only get the uplift for the hedgerow bit. So we wanted to make sure that is a bit bonkers. So we've put in a priority specifically for these nature networks, these wildlife-rich areas, which aren't necessarily habitat specific. So we hope they will be helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you. So just a quick one then. Quick question to Don. What is the end date for submitting comments on the map?
So that would be the 26th of November, I believe. So this is a 6-week consultation. We would have liked to have made it longer, but the deadlines that we have to fit with meant that we could only do 6 weeks, which is broadly in the middle of where everybody else has had their consultation period.
Great. Thank you. And another one for you, Don, if I may, around engagement with LPAs. What engagement have we had with, or what engagement have you had with LPAs to ensure that the LNRS accords with their spatial growth strategies and development allocations?
Okay, so I think this is about local plans and the allocated sites within. Before we were able to start this public consultation, we were legally obliged to seek approval from all local planning authorities. They are in the legislation our supporting authorities. So all of the maps went to them first. Consequently, all of the local planning authorities have checked the maps in advance, and they've overlaid our maps on top of their own maps of emerging allocated sites. We're able to draw some conclusions and some judgments. So this threw up a small number of sites of concern at the time, and these were the sites that were at an advanced stage as part of their strategic housing land allocation assessment process, and those sites were removed from the LNRS for being too advanced. The very few that were retained, it was felt by the LPA that they would be beneficial for biodiversity net gain reasons. I hope that answers that question.
Great. Thank you, Don. And Julie, may I come to you next, please? What evidence or data do you have of what wildlife is already on farmland?
So I'm actually going to defer to Kate a little bit on this too as well. So there is part 3 that she mentioned, which is on species. So you'll find in there that we have identified the very important species that are found specifically on farmland. We are called a farmland bird. Well, certainly the farmland birds are farmland bird assemblage, aren't they, Kate? So what we've done is we've really tried to pull together all the data that we had on species from the biological recording community in Sussex via the Record Centre, and use that to inform everything that we have said in both the habitat and species work in relation to wildlife on farmland. But Kate, you might want to just specify a little bit more if there's anything else more specific on farmland wildlife beyond the birds.
Well, all of the wildlife data we have, be it habitats or species, has come from either national or local data, and we've tried to use local data where we can because it's generally better. But ultimately, it will be down to recorder effort. So we haven't specifically mapped species, and the main reason for that is it won't necessarily reflect the most important areas. It just reflects the areas where people have been out and recording. And it might well be that you haven't had recorders on your farm, so it doesn't necessarily show up there. So we haven't mapped species, but yeah, our data, particularly on species, has come from the Biodiversity Record Centre, and then our habitat data is a mixture of local and national data. So if a survey has been done, we will have included the data if it's with the Record Centre or the national sets.
Great, thank you very much. Got a great question here. I'd like to open up to all of the panelists. There may be different views. What is the incentive for farmers to help deliver the LNRS priorities? Anyone may speak first.
I'll let Ben go, then I've got a view.
Ben, after you.
Potentially an uplift, which is a financial uplift, if you're delivering BNG. So, I mean, you know, the government's put their money where their mouth is on that one. So, yeah.
And Julie?
Yeah, well,
add?
I think when we started off this whole process, which was just after the Environment Act was published, we were really hopeful, I think, generally across the country, that the LNRSs, because it's trying to target effort, would be used by DEFRA and the RPA and others in terms of, you know, maybe incentivizing people to take up schemes that would deliver those particular measures. But we know there is absolutely no formal link between the two. So I guess the answer is there's no hard incentive. Other than the biodiversity net gain one. I think we feel though there's a lot of other sort of softer incentives or benefits maybe or opportunities, because I think what this will be used for is people creating partnerships and initiatives or thinking of doing something as a farming cluster or getting together to deliver things can start to understand what's really needed, how they can come together and help to deliver things. And we're really hoping that people like water companies and others who have money for delivering nature-based solutions can use it to help target where they are, along with their own data and evidence, which is significant, where they can work with farmers and landowners to deliver very specific things in here. And you'll see in the measure there are quite a lot of specific actions around buffering rivers, for example, that would be relevant in that case. So I think we're going to remain hopeful that there are real benefits to this and that it will be taken up across the board by all people interested in delivering for nature.
And
Don, did you want to come in?
I think Julie's largely said it. However, it's self-evident that by and large a farm has to make a profit, and so the incentives are going to be financially based, especially these days. And those incentives are largely going to be arising from funding and alignment. LNRS are designed to align with agri-environment schemes, and of course, any incentive that an individual farm will have will be how it aligns with their particular business plan and the decisions that they are making to diversify their farm. However, I just wanted to highlight what CLA wrote on their website, which is that LNRSs still play a role in guiding funding decisions and informing future scheme design. And that was in relation to ELMS.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And just moving on then to a question related to BNG, to Ben again, if I may. Do you benefit from the strategic significance uplift with BNG if you deliver LNRS priorities, but your site is not directly identified on the map?
That's a good question. Yeah. I think we'll have to check and come back on that one, unless anyone else has got something to add. Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. And it's worth noting that, of course, with any questions that if we can't answer them immediately in the moment and we need to check some data or check some information, or if we run out of time tonight, we will gather up all the questions and provide answers on the LNRS website, the Sussex Nature Recovery website. Kate, may I come over to you now around the AKIB? Does being in an AKIB increase the habitat baseline prior to development?
That's an interesting one, because the guidance changes when the LNRS is published. So before the LNRS is published, if you are within something that's deemed to be of importance by the local planning authority, the baseline would get a strategic significance uplift. If once the LNRS is published, if you are in an area within the AKIB, the baseline is taken as low. It's only post-development that's given the uplift. So that's kind of a little bit of an extra incentive, really. So your baseline's low, but anything you create or enhance on that site will get that strategic significance uplift. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you. Brilliant. Just very quickly as well, we've got a question in the chat around video, a recording of this session. Yes, a recording of this session will be made available. It's being recorded. And another thing, which is a comment or a reflection that's been made. I just wanted to open it up, acknowledge it, and see if the panel wanted to respond at all at this point. Is the feeling that the consultation may be too complicated for many practical farmers, landowners, with some of the jargon, and it could be confusing and a different vocabulary than we're used to. So it may have a tendency to gather comments sort of from a limited or skewed base. Just wanted to acknowledge that comment. Thank you for it, and just see if there's any response at all from the panel.
Well, I'm going to stick my neck out because I don't represent a government body. I mean, I think we all groaned when we saw the guidance coming out with completely new terminology for things that are difficult to explain and understand and create acronyms. So an APA being an area of particular importance for biodiversity, for example, is not an area that's particularly important for biodiversity in the way you and I might understand that, which could be anywhere that's being looked after for wildlife. It's actually just a designation or an irreplaceable habitat. So DEFRA have created a new layer of acronyms and stuff here, which, you may not be surprised about. And we can only apologise for that and just acknowledge completely that we understand that. And I think we would be very welcome for any feedback in terms of how we could make it more straightforward. And we certainly are planning a set of resources for farmers and landowners to help understand how to use the LNRS when it's published, like a sort of toolkit to sort of say this is how you can use it and this is what it all means. But any feedback anyone could give us on that would be much appreciated.
Don, thank you, Julie. Don.
Very bluntly, in my experience with meeting with farmers over the last year or two about this, I don't think that there's so much confusion. There's frustration and annoyance at some of the terminology, but farmers generally understand what's being said. So I don't think it's a huge difficulty there.
Great, thank you. So we've got a question here around just access to the various parts. There's a question of how can we access part 4, the link to the first 3 parts in the map on the Your Voice website, but not to part 4. Diana, would you like to?
Yes, I can answer that one. So because we didn't have a specific question related to part 4 in the consultation survey, and we already felt that we were giving people a lot of information to review. So it is actually in the hub. It's in the section that's called documents. So you can download it from there. But we didn't sort of promote it in the same way as we promoted the other sections because we just thought people would just be overwhelmed. But we can certainly add all the links to the documents in the email that we sent, the follow-up email that we send around, so that you've definitely got access to it.
Thanks. And we've tried to be pretty comprehensive in that and explaining how we've done each step. But if anyone has any questions, particularly about mapping and things like that, feel free to email us and we'll do our best to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Diana. Just bear with me one moment. Just checking through to see if we've missed any last questions at all. Diana, can I just trouble you to check on our board in the background? There's a question here which I think may have been answered already, but can I just check whether that's one that we want to ask? No, that's been answered. No, great.
Actually, no. Let's put that to the panel.
Okay.
Probably good to be clear on it.
We've sorry, apologies for us. We're just sorting out our administration of the questions in the background here. A question here just for the panel potentially to mention is how will it actually support ELM's application?
Do you want me to take that? I think we want to first acknowledge that I think we haven't been able to get many answers from DEFRA and Natural England on this particular question. Our understanding is that it can be used to help by yourselves to identify where things might be helpful to do on your land, and then you have the opportunity to go forward and try and find the ELMS options that align with that. There's no formal tick box or part of the ALMS application process, I understand, where it could acknowledge that what you want to do is also supported by the LNRS. We are hopeful that DEFRA and Natural England will join that dot, but I leave that to you to understand whether that might happen. What we have tried to do is within the measures section, we have tried to create links to some of the ELMS options that already exist or are currently available or have been used previously, to try to give you an example of the kind of things that schemes have funded to try and help deliver that measure. So we can only apologise for that. What we didn't want to do in this document at this stage was to directly align every single action in the LNRS with a current ELMS option, because we realise that is changing all the time. But I think what we can do in publication, as part of the resources that we can give for farmers, is to go through all of our actions and work with Natural England, DEFRA and farming organisations to create a proper table or link, if you map out, if you want to do this action, which are the ELMS options that align with that. So I think, yeah, we didn't want to create something that was going to be out of date literally next week at this stage. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Great. And Kate, coming over to you, and I think this may be the last question that we have time for. Kate, what if we don't agree with a measure that's mapped on our land? Speaking with the voice of a landowner there.
Then please tell us. If there is the opportunity for you to do that, you can put a pin on the map. You can email us directly. We can get back to you and work out exactly where it is that you are, and tell us what it is that's mapped that you don't like, and we will see what we can do.
Great. Well, that. Oh, sorry, Don. Did you want to come in on that?
Yes, I just wanted to come in on a comment that Caroline Harriott has put into the Q&A, which says there is much more wildlife than has been already recorded. Local cluster groups and farmers are already looking after the environment and, importantly, producing food. That's absolutely true. We were invited to visit some of these farms, and they became case studies for us, and we filmed them to show how wildlife can be supported whilst also producing food. And this is something that is growing into a delivery action for us to gather up much more of this information that we weren't able to gather up to this moment in time, to feed into the next review, which we are expecting to be hard on the heels after we've published.
Great, thanks, Don. That's much appreciated. That, and certainly on a personal note, what a pleasure it was to meet some of you and produce case studies of some of the local nature recovery in action. So thank you to everyone who hosted us. Right, that's it. As I say on the Q&A, it just remains for me to pass back to Don now. So thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you to our panelists for your very informative answers.
Thank you, Rob. And yes, it's time to draw this session to a close. For any unanswered questions, I think we managed to capture them all. We will gather these up along with the answered questions and work them up so that they can be added into our FAQs that will be posted on our website. So with that said, it just leaves me to say thank you to my colleagues, especially Kate Cole, who put in an awful lot of effort to make those maps work for her tonight. And thank you to all of you for your questions and for giving up your time this evening to listen to us. And we hope to hear from you soon as part of the consultation. Thank you very much. Good night.